Welcome to Jaguar Boot Camp, Timing Your First Race, Part 4, Preparing. The information in this presentation is the property of Innovative Timing Systems, LLC. All of this information is confidential and may not be disclosed to anyone outside of Innovative Timing Systems or your own company without written authorization from the President of Innovative Timing Systems. This presentation is only provided to customers who are under a current support agreement that has not expired. In this module, we're going to talk about how you can prepare your equipment and your team for race day. First of all, it's critical that you test all of your equipment prior to showing up on, say, Saturday morning. How can you do that? Well, first of all, you want to get the equipment out. You want to make sure that your antennas are clean, your cables are in good shape, don't have any frays or broken connectors, and you want to power up the system and make sure that it's operating normally. One important step is to make sure that your battery backup is fully charged, and we recommend that you plug it in and turn the system off, but let it stay plugged in for a minimum of 8 hours. That should ensure that your battery on your backup supply is fully charged before you go out. It's also important to make sure you've tested your laptop, make sure your connectivity is good to the equipment. That simply means plug the reader case into the laptop and make sure that the two can communicate. You can do that by simply clicking, as you're seeing here, on the connect button, and if it connects to the reader, there's a good chance that everything is working properly. Now, the next thing you want to do is you really want to test Jaguar and make sure it's able to read a chip or two. The way you can do that is really simple. We've already talked about how to connect, and once you do that, you could simply enable the reader, and then you could start collecting chips. You probably, or should have at least, one bib that has a test chip on it. Let's say you have a bronze system which will read from chips 1 to 5,000. You might want to create a test bib and label it as bib 4,999. And you can use that when you're testing the system to make sure it's reading properly. So you can test Jaguar and make sure that chips are being read correctly. That's very important. Next thing you should do is test your power. Well, there's a couple of steps there that you can do. First of all, if you're using a generator, and a lot of people will tend to forget this, make sure you've got oil in the generator and you're not running low. Generators will burn up a little bit of oil over time, and you don't want it to fail on race day. So why not check the generator now, a couple days before the race. Also make sure you have plenty of fuel for the generator. You don't want to run out on race day. You also want to check and make sure your backup power supply is working, and that's easy. If you've plugged the system in for a total of 8 hours, perhaps you'll plug it in the morning. Well, that night after you've had dinner, just go over to the wall, make sure the system's powered up, of course, unplug the power cord from the timing cabinet from the wall, and the backup power supply should kick on automatically. And if you press the little button that's on the front of that, not the power button, but the one below that, you can actually check to make sure that you've got plenty of power available. That button will cycle through the various settings and tell you that your backup power supply is ready to go. So testing your power is simple. Check the generator, check your backup power supply, make sure it's fully charged up. The next step in getting ready is to plan your network. You need to think about your configuration at your start or finish lines, and you need to think about how you're going to bring all that equipment together and talk over a network. So as an example, if you have a finish line and you have perhaps a backup finish line, you want to think about how to network that. The best choice is to always run a cable, is to wire it. There's a problem if you're using Wi-Fi to finish line, and let's say you have 3,000 or 4,000 people standing around all playing with their cell phones. They're texting, they're talking to relatives, whatever the case is, that amount of RF energy, that cell activity, could cause interference to your Wi-Fi router. I've seen that happen at races. So we recommend you always wire everything together. If that's not possible, then you can set up a Wi-Fi network, and you can actually order very powerful antennas that are designed to be pointed at each other to increase the signal strength to make sure your Wi-Fi network will get through. Now, setting up a network isn't just the physical cabling. You want to make sure all your addressing is correct. You want to check and make sure that you're able to copy perhaps a file from one system to another, and most importantly, you want to make sure that Jaguar can communicate between systems. That's easy to test because in the Utilities menu, there's an option where you can actually say that I want to ping a device or a computer. And that feature will let you actually check to see if you have connectivity from one Jaguar system to another. This is particularly important if you're using kiosks or you're using announcers. To make yourself feel really good on Saturday morning, here's a tip. On Wednesday night, get your announcer laptop out and get your kiosk out and try sending the read that you're getting from your test bib over to both of them and make sure that you're able to do so. Don't wait until Friday night to do that. If you have a problem, you want to be able to call in for tech support and talk to somebody at least 2 to 3 days in advance of your race. Sometimes we need that amount of time to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. Now, the next step in making sure you're ready is to plan your staffing needs. This is an area that sometimes doesn't get enough attention. If you have a gun start race, let's say, and at the finish line you simply have a bronze system, you need at least 2 people for a race that might be up to, say, 1,000 total participants. Why would you need 2 people? Well, somebody's going to be running the timing system at the finish line, and that second person is going to be providing the redundancy behind the finish line, either using Jaguar remote software on a laptop, or perhaps just running the Jaguar software itself on a second laptop. You may not know this, but you can take the Jaguar software, load it on a laptop, and just manually type in bib numbers of participants as they cross the finish line. You can then take that database that's being created, merge it into your finish line database, and you now have a database with all of your electronic chip reads, all your manual entries from the finish line, as well as all those manual entries from the backup point. So 2 people are a minimum when you're timing a race that's perhaps a 5K and say up to 1,000 people. If you're timing a larger event with 3,000 or 4,000 people in it, you're going to need much more staff. And it's very likely you may be chip timing the start of the race. So as a rule of thumb, any race that's about 3,000 people or less, you're going to need at least a couple of staff members at the start. You're certainly going to need 2 or 3 staff members at the finish. And most important, you want to name somebody as sort of the captain of your team who's going to be responsible for producing the results and interfacing with the race director. One of the smartest things you can do on a big race is to make sure the race director knows. If you have any questions, this is the person on our team you should speak with because they're responsible for making sure you're satisfied. Okay, so you've thought about your staffing needs, and one of the things you want to do is you want to define the roles and responsibilities for each person on the staff. This is really critical. It's important that somebody have decision-making authority. So again, if you have nothing more than a gun start 5K race, say 500 people, one of the 2 people at the finish line has to ultimately be in charge. And their role might be that of team captain, the other person may be an assistant, and you have to clearly define who's doing what. You don't want to show up on race morning and have 2 people look at each other and say, well, who's going to take care of this? So one thing we recommend is you write down the specific responsibilities that each person has on race day. Once you've done that, then everybody understands what's got to happen and who's going to be responsible for it. Ultimately, if you've defined the roles and responsibilities and you've communicated that to the team, everybody understands what it is they have to do to contribute to a successful race. Now, assigning roles and responsibilities isn't the end, though. You also have to train and do modeling and practice with the staff. When we're getting ready to do a big race ourselves, we always set the equipment up and we'll do some practice sessions, and it's easy for you to do as well. You could take a bronze system as an example, set it on your driveway, program perhaps 4 or 5 bibs, and you could do a pretend race. There's also a demo mode in Jaguar that will simulate a race, allowing the software to create fake reads for bibs 1 to 100. The most important thing is simply to try it out. Don't show up on a Saturday or Sunday morning having never timed a race before and never practiced. You definitely want to go end to end. What does that mean? You want to load registration data. You want to make sure your age groups are set up. You want to simulate runners crossing through a finish line, either by reading some bibs or using demo mode, and then you want to generate all of your reports. It's critical that you prepare the staff and help them understand how to be successful. Sometimes little things like asking them to be on time and to arrive at a particular time is crucial. As an example, we never time a race when we're not there at least 2 hours in advance, and most of the time we'll be there 3 to 4 hours. Even on a large marathon, we'll stay the entire night setting up the equipment, making sure everything is ready, and nothing is left to surprise. As a rule of thumb, most 5Ks, you need to be there 2 hours early. If it's a 10K, we recommend 2.5 to 3 hours to make sure you have plenty of time. If it's a major marathon, there's a good chance you're going to be setting up the night before, doing a walkthrough with your staff, and it's a good idea to walk through with the race director. If all of that's done, you can rush back to the hotel, get your 3 hours or 4 hours of sleep, show up again maybe 4 hours before the race starts, and you should be ready to go. Well, all that sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? What happens when something goes wrong? It can happen. Maybe one of the readers, for whatever reason, wasn't set up properly. Perhaps the antenna just wasn't plugged in, and we missed a few reads. Or, better yet, everything went really well, but for some reason, people are reporting that their time is off by 30 seconds. Well, number one, don't panic. It's the mistake made by timers who aren't true professionals. When something happens, rest assured you've got the best equipment in the industry, and you've got us backing you up. So number one is stay calm. If the race director comes running over in a panic and says, I think we have an age group issue, just say, you know what, let's take a look at that, and we'll come back over in a matter of a few minutes and give you an update. Notice I didn't say a solution, give you an update. One of the things that will make a race director happy is if you know about the problem and it's clear you're focusing on it and trying to solve it, and you give them a frequent update of, say, every 3 or 4 minutes that, yep, we're looking into it, they'll make them pretty happy. Of course, they're panicked a little bit because maybe something's gone wrong, but by you staying calm, it helps. Never, ever show panic. It's the most important thing you can do as a timer is to remain calm, work through the situation. If you think about it, in Jaguar, there's an enormous amount of backup built in. So let's say, for example, that a time appears to be wrong in the database. Perhaps somebody was editing the database, one of your staff members, and they accidentally wiped out a field, perhaps a finish time. No need to worry. It's in the chip output file. If you go to the chip output file and just search it, you'll find the bib number and you'll find their finish time. Not only that, but you've got auto backups saving your data every 30 to 60 seconds. You're a smart timer, so what have you done? You've put a USB flash drive in the side of the laptop to make sure that they're being written out to the flash drive, those backups, in case the hard drive would crash. You're going to feel comfortable knowing even if this laptop fails, I've got Jaguar already loaded on a backup laptop, and that thumb drive has my log file on it. It has all of my age groups, my divisions. It's even got my auto-save backups. So in other words, don't panic. Look at your log file. Look at your chip output file. Take a look at those backups. The data will be there. Let's talk about worst case scenario. Let's say you show up to a race. It's a gun start. It's a 10K. And you're going to have a single bronze system at the finish line. Your cousin was supposed to show up and work that morning at the backup location and didn't show up. In other words, you said to them, I'm going to give you Jaguar remote. You're going to sit in a lawn chair 50 feet back, and you're going to type in every bib number. And your cousin, unfortunately, didn't show up for the event. Whatever reason, not there. The most important thing you can do at that moment is immediately talk to the race director and say, do you have a volunteer that we could borrow? We have some tasks that could be done. I have never met a race organizer that wouldn't find you a volunteer, particularly if they sense that it's urgent. So if you have to, turn up the heat a little and say, we've got a little situation over here, nothing to worry about, but we could use an extra staff member. One of our staff members was sick and couldn't make it. Put that person in front of Jaguar and just explain to them when a bib comes across the finish line on a runner, type in the number and just press the enter key. The other thing is, what happens if the Jaguar system goes down at the finish line? Your bronze system, perhaps for whatever reason, and hopefully this will never happen, but the power supply fails. Remember, you can always type bib numbers into Jaguar. Always. So you can begin typing bib numbers in even though the system is down, and it will continue to write those to the log file, the chip file, and the database. If you want the ultimate in backup, then what you could do is you could put video cameras if you had to, and you could be able to look back at that footage and see when people came across the finish line and in what order. So what are we really saying? We're saying stay calm, Things will happen at every race. It's without a doubt something interesting and fun and curious always happens at races. I don't know why, but it does. And if you're confident in your system, you've watched all these videos, you've learned a lot, and you know what you're doing, you'll remain calm on race day, the race director will remain calm, you'll get it figured out, and you'll end up having a great race experience. So that concludes this Part 4 training session. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.